I believe that war will destroy us, all of us, rim and core alike. All that the colours have built together, all we have protected, the legacy of the society will vanish, not because our arms are weak, not because our commanders are frail, but because we are fighting against a religion whose God still lives. So, 𝐒𝐻 𝐿 is set 10 years after the events of Morning Star, and in between these 10 years, it's basically the new Solar Republic trying to hold on to what they already have. So for the past 10 years, there's been anarchy, chaos, and war, and the story opens up with Darrow returning home after like a very long campaign, and he's just launched an iron rain over Mercury, which killed 1 million soldiers, 200,000 obsidians, and just a crazy amount of damage and resources. And the Republic is furious, or at least half of the Republic, the low colours that unite around Dancer, because Darrow disobeyed a direct order from the Senate, above the law of their own republic he tried to make, which was kind of a great theme in this book. Governments are very inefficient at war, and that's why we see military dictators and leaders in times of like chaos. And that's exactly what Darrow's role is. He is the war machine for the colours. And so we have the Ash Lord, which is the remnants of the society, and that's basically who Darrow's been fighting against this whole time. The Ash Lord who burnt a moon, and I think he's the father of 𝐒𝐻𝐿. Since the death of Octavia, from then until the beginning of the book, there's been over 200 million deaths in the solar system due to the rising, due to lack of food, lack of infrastructure being destroyed, terrorism, all sorts of crazy stuff, war, famine, disease. And so everyone's pretty exhausted of the war, and we have two conflicting sides where Dancer and his people want to make peace, and Darrow is the opposite. Now, in this book, we're also introduced to new POV characters. One is Lyria, which was actually my favourite POV in the entire book, and I've seen a lot of people say they don't like Lyria, and that is surprising. But yeah, Lyria kind of serves as kind of an introductory back into the world. She's like a red, like Darrow was on Mars, but she's a red that's been liberated from the mines by the revolution. And we get to see her POV and her perspective and opinions on the society, whether they did is good and bad. So Lyria's chapters are just really fun. Then we have Ephraim. This is a grey, and this one, okay, firstly, Ephraim was my least favourite POV and character. Like, he's just such a grumpy old bastard. So moody, so pessimistic, so like, yeah, no, he's Ephraim's not the best. He's a well-written character, but I don't like him. But you can see, what I like is that you can see exactly why his outlook on the world is so dark. But I also love that he's a grey, and we get insight into the colour of the grey. Before we only had perspectives of gold and red, and now we get a grey perspective, which brings in some other perspectives as well. For example, Ephraim is a thief, and in his crew he has an obsidian, Volga, which is a fan favourite. I love Volga, she's a great character. She's like there's like a weird irony to her character, where she's like somewhat innocent and naive, but she's also an obsidian and seen by the world as like a brutish murderer. And then there's Syra and Dana, which is a red and a green, I think. the technical dudes that do the hacking and stuff. And so we see just a lot more of the world and the colours. The world building in this book is better than the original trilogy. It's way more detailed. Pierce really spends his time diving into different places, the different cultures. He gives us more detail on the different colors and how they interact with each other, how they came to be. And the writing has matured as well. It's become more complex, mature and darker, just better written overall. You can definitely see a big improvement from, or a big difference rather, from this book to Red Rising. Like this book and Dark Age, but they feel very different to the previous trilogy. Like I said, more mature, better writing, bigger words, but also a much slower pace, which is able to really flesh out and build this world. It feels like the beginning of an epic fantasy story. Even though this is book 4 in the series, it feels like a book 1. And then the final character is Lysander. Lysander's a very interesting one. I really like his plot and the setting that Pierce introduces us to. The fact that he's with Cassius, which I've really liked Cassius like throughout the story, but this book made me like him even more. It's just, I kind of feel sorry for him, but respect him at the same time. Pity and respect. But yeah, so he's been a mentor to Lysander, and Lysander's annoying, but again, a very well written character. I think Lysander is actually really well written. You'd see more of that in Dark Age, but for now, you see glimpses of it with his like perfect memory, or just his upbringing in general, being brought up by Octavia and being surrounded by some of the most powerful people in the solar system. So those are the POV characters, which I enjoyed every single one. I enjoyed Lyria the most, Ephraim the least, although Ephraim's plot was mostly really fun. It was a bit, and especially when it converges with the other storylines. Lysander's plot was amazing. We get to see more of the world, and it leads to some really impactful things for the world overall. And Darrow, the first time I read this book, I found his chapters frustrating, but now, in retrospect, they're a lot less frustrating, and I just in general enjoyed it more. I'm gonna talk about some other side characters, starting with a character from Darrow's chapters, which is like a favorite of mine, and I think he's a fan favorite too, which is Apollonius, I think his name is, or I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, this guy is just like an absolute psychopath, but a really entertaining one. Like the way he speaks is so verbose, it's so exaggerated, like he's front of stage at a theatre play. And he kind of has like a little weird camaraderie, grudge and respect for Darrow, but Darrow doesn't really feel the same for him. I don't know why, but for some reason Severus thinks he does. We also get introduced to the characters from Lysander and Cassius's chapters, or well, Lysander's chapters, and I really enjoyed these characters a lot as well. They are very different to the rest of the society. I'm talking about the Moon Lords, of course. So Romulus, Dido, Diomedes, and Seraphina. There were some other characters in the family, but these are the main core ones, and I liked every single one of them. They were really distinct, really like well written, and in a short amount of time it's able to just display a lot about these characters. For example, Romulus's honor, Dido's ambition, Diomedes' discipline, and Seraphina's savagery, just to name a few traits of them. We also have the Red Hand, which shows up at the beginning of the book, and we see like, what's her name? The woman with the burnt, scarred face. We see her, and she just shows up for like a page or two. If you read the other trilogy a while ago, you probably wouldn't even notice that she was in the book. But that was cool. But even what's more cool is the Syndicate, and there's a lot of mystery surrounding this seedy criminal organization. I really like the way it was written into this book, and they play a really important role later on in the book. Let's just say that. It also helps some of the storylines to converge. Some of my favorites as well, they don't get much screen time, or page time should I say, but Pax and Electra I thought were super cool, especially like I think Pax has like the best line in the entire book. And I quote, "Comply, citizen, or I'll be forced to learn how to fly a plane." It really highlights the level of the gold intellect, like just how different and more impressive they are than the rest of the colours. The amount of privilege they have, the things they get taught, their mental and physical capabilities, it's on another level. And yeah, we just see more or different political factions. Like, things are becoming more complicated as the empire and the story goes on. So for example, we have the Obsidians, we have the Dancers faction, we have the Golds faction, we have the Moon Lords, we have the Society, we have Lysander and Cassius off by themselves, and just loads of different aspects that kind of give this book a lot more depth than the previous trilogy. It is starting to become very complex, and it feels like Pierce handles this quite effortlessly. It was very interesting to see how the characters have changed during the time skip. Like Darrow, as you can tell from the excerpt from the beginning of the video, Darrow has become like an icon, a legend, like a myth almost to his people. Also, we see Darrow really struggling in this book, more than I think he does in the previous books, and he makes a lot more mistakes, like very crucial mistakes, to the point where you're like, Darrow, what are you doing, my dude? What are you doing? But yeah, it makes some of these characters even more fascinating and feel more fleshed out. Like, I like how they feel very different. Like, Severo and Darrow are both fathers now, which fundamentally changes their characters. I love how it continues the themes of the previous trilogy, but it almost challenges itself with its own themes in the nature of the story. So the themes of class and politics, war, so like oppression, freedom, it's like, can these things last? Like, if you were to actually succeed in taking over, what comes next? How do you maintain what you have? How do you prosper? How do you help? But yeah, this book is quite slow because, like I mentioned, it feels like it's just doing so much setting up, introducing you to the new characters, and expanding the world with more detail, starting new plot lines. But I actually prefer it. It's kind of like a trade-off, and because we get such better world building and writing, I would say the trade-off is completely worth it. This book, I love how it's able to continually improve from the previous trilogy. I feel like it has a very strong reason to exist, the way how Pierce challenges the themes and ideas. And I've never really seen this done in a story before. We usually have like most stories would end where Morningstar ended, and they wouldn't like continue and be like, will this revolution actually succeed? So I think it's fascinating to see the other side of this and to see if they can hold on to what they've taken. I also think it's fascinating that Darrow, a somewhat good man, the idea that he has to become a monster and sacrifice his humanity to hold on to what he's managed to achieve thus far. Oh, I almost forgot to mention this. I love the added POVs because we get to see Darrow from other people's eyes. Like, Darrow is seen as this war prodigy, a violent, like, ruthless man. He's just a force to be reckoned with, like, ruthless, proficient, manipulative. Yeah, that was awesome, especially a chapter in particular, a Lysander chapter later on in the book. His perspective and commentary is really fascinating. But yeah, that is my review for Iron Gold. But I would love to know what you thought of the book. If you're doing a reread, or if it's your first time, who are your favorite characters? What were your favorite plot points? I'll be starting Dark Age tomorrow, and I'll have a review out very soon. Until then,